The top story that we are tracking coming, by the way, what's happening in Gujarat at the moment, where throngs of industrialists, entrepreneurs, the biggest newsmakers and the names are currently in Gujarat. They are either sharing what is going to be in order from their companies or talking about plans to build Gujarat and build India in turn. Just yesterday, we saw Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman actually detailing as to what her plans are for the country and how India is on course to achieve that 30 trillion GDP mark by 2047.
Absolutely. So I think just prior to Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman taking stage, you also had Mukesh Ambani, and Mukesh Ambani in fact had set a higher target for India's GDP, saying that India will be a $35 trillion economy by 2047. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman being a little more realistic and saying that 30 trillion is a more likely scenario by 2047. In addition to that, of course, the $5 trillion plans which have been in the making and have been elusive for the last 5 years or so are likely to come through by the year 27-28. So India is obviously then going to be the third largest economy in the world. It's nothing new. It's not something that we haven't spoken about earlier. It's not something that analysts have not spoken about earlier. But Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman giving a definitive dateline saying that FY28 by when India will become a $5 trillion economy is a certainty.
And numbers are lining up, come to think of it. We are close to $4 trillion at the moment.
We are already a $3.7 trillion economy.
3.8 when we last heard.
Yeah, so 3.75 or then near about. So even if we grow at a 7%, marginal rate 7%, which is lower than the Statistical Office has released and the Ministry of Statistics has released, and lower than the expectation of 7.2% that the RBI has also released, then we are likely to definitely be a $4 trillion economy by the end of this financial year.
Absolutely. The numbers are realistic. Before we delve deeper into them, let's quickly listen in to what Nirmala Sitharaman had to say.
Looking at development as being a partnership where you leverage the strength of the state and look at strengthening those challenges, in the sense get over the challenges and make them strengths for the states. Therefore, I call it a partnership between the center and states. So this participatory approach is what gives us the language for thinking about how India can be reaching that target through the Amrit Kal, the 25 years between now and 47, that we can reach to build a developed India, not just in terms of what will be reached, 30 trillion US dollars by 2047, but also with the 30 trillion inclusive, empowering growth for all citizens. So Viksit Bharat agenda is a comprehensive vision plan which is being developed by Government of India. I appreciate the effort of the state in getting this already on board.
The Viksit Bharat agenda, inclusive growth. I think inclusive growth has been one of the cornerstones of this government's promise to develop country. 30 trillion is the number intact. That is going to be in sight every time a new policy is rolled out. This is a very crucial time. You know, this is coming right ahead of those crucial 2-3 months buffer that the current government has before it goes to election, just at least about 20 days before the interim budget would be out, which is going to set stage for what's to come in the next 5 years.
I don't know whether the interim budget is actually going to set stage for anything substantial when you talk about a long-term India perspective, and we'll have to wait for the new government to take office and the real budget to be announced. But I think inclusive development, yes. And what FM was talking about, the partnership between states and center, definitely yes, there has been positive movement in that direction. And on inclusiveness, overall, I think the direct beneficiary transfers, the DBT scheme, overall financial inclusion by way of the Jan Dhan accounts that have been opened, banking the unbanked, these are obviously great credits to the BJP government, great credit to the overall financial ecosystem architecture that has been built in India over the last 1 decade or so. But I think the problem still lies, and the core of the problem lies with the fact that even at $30 trillion in 2047, what is the per capita GDP? I think at some level we will have to stop comparing ourselves to countries like Germany and Japan, which are much smaller in the number of people that they house, much smaller in the overall land available to them, and India being a much larger economy, 30 trillion, translating down to the per capita income of still being in the range of about $2,600 or so per citizen per year is way too small compared to, let's say, US, which is right now at about $26 trillion, lesser than what India is likely to be by 2047. Boasting of a per capita income of about $80,000. China, on the other hand, already has a per capita GDP 6 times that of India at about $12,000, despite having almost the same number of people as India has. So I think every time we talk about these big headline GDP numbers, GDP as a whole being the third largest, second largest, first largest is all right, but it has to translate to per capita GDP. And that, for a country housing the number of people we do, 1.4 billion and counting, is going to be a far cry for India.
Absolutely, at about $2,000 per capita GDP, not there just as yet when compared to other countries who are at the top of the chart as far as their growth rate is concerned.